Hello and welcome. I'm Jennifer Shlimovich, and I help busy women simplify plant-based living so they can improve their health, save time, and feel supported, even if their family isn't on board. Here in the Confident Vegan channel, you'll find insightful interviews with inspiring vegans, practical tips for plant-based living, and empowering conversations about what it really means to live in alignment with your values. I am also the co-host of that vegan morning show with Kimberly Winters of the Did You Bring the Hummus podcast. You can start your day the vegan way and watch us live every Monday morning at 7 a.m. Eastern on YouTube at That Vegan Morning Show. Today, my special guest is Brigitte Gemme, who doesn't like cooking and she also hates deciding what's for dinner. But she wants to eat healthy and tasty vegan food. So she figured out the most efficient ways to plan meals and batch cook and teaches those methods on her website, Vegan Family Kitchen. She is a healthy vegan nutrition and cooking educator as well as a health habit coach. Brigitte holds a PhD in education and two certificates in plant-based nutrition and is the author of the book Flow in the Kitchen: Practices for Healthy, Stress-Free Vegan Cooking. Welcome, Brigitte.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here, Jennifer.
It's really nice to have you here today. And sorry I got tongue-tied at the end there, but
No worries at all.
you have a lot of amazing things that you're all about. And I'm really excited to talk to you today about all of those things because cooking healthy can be so intimidating. There's a lot of misconceptions, right? That it's complicated ingredients and there's the complicated ingredients and then also being healthy, it's not delicious, right? There's all these like misconceptions.
Hmm.
It's like you have to be compromised in so many different ways. So before we get into all the amazing things that you do, what is your vegan story?
I am, in many ways, the most unlikely vegan. And if I went vegan, trust me, like anybody can. I come from a line of dairy farmers. My great grandfather, I'm pretty sure. My grandfather was a dairy farmer. When he passed away, my dad and mother operated the dairy farm for some years. Thankfully, by the time I was born, they had transitioned away from cows and to pigs. But then I think deep down, my dad liked the animals. Like I think my
Mhm.
dad loved that. I know my dad loved animals. He was like every picture of him is always like trying to communicate with a goose or something, a chipmunk or whatever.
Mhm.
And he was also scared of the big animals with good reasons. It's a dangerous job. And so my parents thankfully decided to have a plant nursery. So I was not raised on the animal farm after I was 4 years old. But for us, animals were always there to serve. Like animals were there to support humans. We had dogs, but they were guard dogs and they lived outside in the Quebec winter. It was extremely cold and they just stayed in their doghouse and they did not have very long, healthy lives, that's for sure. And I loved cheese. I had meat at, every meal practically. And that was just the way it was. I never questioned any of this. And at the same time, I grew up in the 80s, early 90s, where environmental issues became more important and in the schools, learning about recycling and all the good things. And I wanted to be somebody who was urban. I wanted to live in the city, get around on foot, not have to drive all the time. I cared a lot about my environmental footprint. And I never in a million years thought about the environmental footprint of animal agriculture until kind of in a coincidental way, somebody I knew, like somebody who was in my social circle, published a book about exactly that, about the ethical and environmental impact of animal agriculture. And because she was somebody I knew, it came across, my desk. I saw about it, I read about it on social media, and I was like, oh, wait a minute. And I felt so dumb. I just felt so stupid for having been preaching, to so many people about environmental issues for so many years and never even thinking about the food I was eating. And also, I was a bike commuter.
Mhm.
And if people think vegans are righteous, they haven't met a bike commuter. I can certainly say that I was. And I got into this conversation online, and the other guy must have been a vegan. I'm almost sure, but I'll never know. And he said something along the lines of, if you ride your bike, but you fuel your bike rides with steak, you might as well be driving a Hummer. And that caused me to stop dead in my tracks.
Mhm.
And I looked up the math, and it's not totally accurate, but it's definitely not wrong. It's quite close to that. And so that sent me in a tailspin of research and down a really deep rabbit hole. And at the end of a couple months of that, I decided, well, I got to take one for the team. I'm a responsible person. I'm going to reduce my meat consumption way down. And also, because of my friend's book, I was considering the impact of dairy. I was like, I'll be plant based at home. And that was in 2013. I'll be fully plant based, vegan cooking at home. If I go out at a restaurant, I'll go for the vegetarian option, because even I was living in California then for just a year, but even then it was
Mhm.
hard to get a vegan option. It was not like obvious that you'd find one. And if I eat at someone else's house, I'll just eat whatever they give me. And I went like that for a couple of years. And in 2015, my son was born. And in the middle of the night, I was nursing him. And when you're breastfeeding around the clock, you start having hallucinations because you're not sleeping very much and having all
Mhm.
these thoughts. And it occurred to me that if he was a baby cow and he was a boy, because my first child was a girl, he would be taken away and sent to slaughter, by
Mm.
then. And it just felt wrong to continue to, like, it's not that I love animals. It's not like I don't have pets. It's not that I would like to hug a cow or anything, but I'm aware that cows can suffer just like us. And in that context of breastfeeding, it just hit me right in the face of, like, I can't continue imposing this pain onto other beings just because they're not born human. That's wrong.
Mhm.
And I had all the tools already. I knew what I was doing. And I had no doubt that from a health perspective, it would be fine. And that night I became vegan. And that's my story. And I've been vegan ever since. So that was in probably early summer 2015. And so it's been 10 years now. I'm really happy to say that I have not yet died of protein deficiency, or any other deficiency for that matter.
Same. I've been vegan over 8 years and
You look fine.
doing all right. Thank you for
Who knew?
sharing that story. I've talked so many times with my guests about all the cognitive dissonance we've all had, right? We don't know something until we know it, and then there's some pivotal moment that changes the way how we see things. And for you in that moment, it's, you're having a mom moment and you're looking at your young newborn son and thinking about what cows must go through because they do have feelings. And
Yes.
they do have feelings and, it's there's this superiority of humans, right? That seems to be
Hmm.
there's this entitlement that, well, we're higher on the food chain, so, but who's to determine that, right? Who made that up, right?
Yeah, show that to me if you spend a week by yourself in the woods, and we'll get back to you, right?
Right,
Um, and I
exactly.
mean, like, it's funny because I say I'm come from a lineage of dairy farmers. So my mom was around the dairy cows when she was little, and just recently, I think she heard me tell my story on a podcast or something, and she said, "Oh, it's funny you mentioned that about the cows, because I remember when I was a kid, the day that they would take the calves away from the cows. And back then, it was not industrial sized farming. It's not like they were not super organized. So there would be a day when they would round up the 4 or 5 calves, that they had this spring. And she said the cows would just, spend the whole day mooing, and sometimes several days, and they would be so
Mm,
distressed because their babies had been taken away, right? And my
yeah.
mom had been thinking about that for years, but she never said or really did anything about it. And now she's not fully vegan. My mom eats eggs, and sometimes she eats fish, but she's very much got a lot of the same feelings now. And when you expose people to those thoughts, I think a light bulb goes on, and often the light bulb doesn't go on right away. But you're just planting a seed, and eventually it will bloom. So one person at a time.
Yeah, it took me about 2 years. It started off with, I have eczema and rosacea and learning how certain foods can cause flare-ups.
Yeah.
And I noticed a correlation of how when I would have dairy products, it seemed to aggravate things. So I was reading about how dairy can trigger these things. And so I decided to do a little experiment because there's no big commitment with an experiment, right? So
Yeah.
gave up dairy for 30 days to see what happened. Well, what happened was my skin looked a lot better, my sinuses got better, and I just felt so much better in ways I didn't realize I was feeling bad all the time
Yeah.
until I gave up dairy. And then during that time, I looked at I was looking up dairy-free recipes, which a lot of vegan recipes came up. And then I'm like, wow, this food looks better than the food I make, right?
Yeah.
Colors and flavors and use of spices that I never would have cooked with otherwise, right? It just opened up this whole new world for me. And I came across in that forks over knives and whole food plant-based eating and having heart disease and diabetes in my family. That was something I was concerned about. And my mom died of a heart attack. And so I was already trying to be more conscious about eating good, but also not feeling deprived, right? Because a lot of the
Yeah.
time you see all these different fad diets and it just seems so restrictive and just, you're right, just not enjoyable at all.
Yeah.
And I've done some of those fad diets over the years and you lose maybe some weight real quick and then I would gain it all back and then some. It just was never sustainable. And so finding whole food plant-based is like a blueprint for just eating better and just, discovering this world of vegan food. And then, after a month, I had, I think, frozen yogurt or something and instantly felt itchy and just really felt like it tasted good, but that was it. It just didn't feel good. And I realized, oh, there's
Yeah.
really something here. So I started just pursuing vegan through the food lens. And with all of that, it then made me all of a sudden get in touch with the other aspects of it. Things I knew,
Yeah.
but didn't think too deeply about it, right? And then all of a sudden you have that, start thinking about it differently. You watch a documentary. I watched Vegucated, and that sat with me a bit. And I wanted to be vegan, but I was like, how can I be vegan when no one in my family is going to want to be vegan? And that was like that residual people pleaser part of me that was like, I thought I had stopped being a people pleaser, but then I realized, oh, here's this other area I need to work on with myself. And finally, I got to that point where my soul just couldn't take it anymore. Like I had to do this for myself. And I had that talk with my husband, and he was supportive of it. I didn't impose it on my family. Our kids were younger at the time. We have a blended family. And so I was the cook of the house. So I made meat and stuff for them still, but I didn't do it. And that was my starting point. Then when we
Mm,
became
yeah.
empty nesters, I had a which was a couple of years ago. I told my husband, I was like, you know what? I can't cook this anymore. Like I feel like there's levels of cognitive dissonance even after you become a vegan that it's other things that maybe were still tolerable for you become less tolerable. And I told my husband, if you want the meat, then you can make that.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, because of me, we don't have very much non-vegan food in the house because most people, my husband doesn't cook much. He does a little bit, but because I do most of the cooking, he's going to eat a lot of the stuff that I make. So,
Yeah, exactly.
so yeah, and so it took me a couple of years to really fully, and being vegan for like a couple months and then still figuring out the health stuff and then going back to like fish was like the last thing that had gone for me. And
That's so interesting.
but everyone has their process, right? And I always tell people it's always about progress over perfection. And those little gradual changes make the sustainable change, right? Because when you make too much of a drastic change, it's not going to stick. So it's just, oh, and So anyway, that that's how it was for me too. It just it took some
Yeah,
time. Everyone goes through that journey. And
totally.
what what inspired you to do the work that you do now?
Um, I so enjoy the opportunity that I get to empower people to cook their own food, to make it healthy, um, to make it vegan. That's in the stories you tell of your own journey are resonate, I think, with a lot of people that will be listening to this and a lot of my clients as well. And what was at the beginning really hard for me was how overwhelming this brand new world of fully vegan cooking was. And you just mentioned how you look at the pictures and it looks beautiful and it's wonderful and also very different from anything I was cooking previously. I had started introducing a lot more beans when I
Mm.
was pregnant with my daughter. So constipation is a common pregnancy problem, as I'm sure many listeners know. And so I had stumbled upon this cookbook that's really awesome, by the way. It's called Spilling the Beans. And
Mm.
it's, I would say, a flexitarian cookbook. It's got meat in it, um, but a bunch of beans recipes. And I had started cooking with more beans, but I definitely was not filling half my plate with vegetables, right? And so when I decided, okay, now I have to be like fully vegan. This is my commitment. It was like, okay, what are we going to eat? And for the first little while, I was choosing one different recipe for every single dinner. And the amount of cooking that I was doing and planning and complexity was far beyond what was sustainable in the long term. And so I started because in my professional work previously, I was a research manager in academia and I was strong on project management. And I love checklists, I love templates, I love all manners of systems that reduce decision fatigue and that ensure some like quality over the long term. And so I started creating these meal planning templates and I shared them in Facebook groups that I was in with other people who cared about vegan meal planning. And everyone was like, "Whoa, I love this!" And that was the beginning for me of my um, professional vegan meal planning journey, where I started creating meal plans for others. And my idea was always to up because as you said at the beginning in the intro, I don't like to cook that much. I cook because I think it's important. I cook because I don't want to eat food out of a box. I cook because I have my own best interest at heart. And I know that commercial industrial cooking does not have my best interest at heart, quite the opposite. And so I needed to find a way to cook as well as I could in as little time as possible. And that's where the meal planning started with um, I had these meal plans where I would say, okay, there's two feature beans per week and two feature grains per 2 week period and a bunch of seasonal vegetables and mixing things together. And over the course of several months, then it became what is now my flagship uh, product, I guess, which is the vegan meal plans. And now they were first created for families, but then I adapted them for people who cook for one or two. And it was really this idea that we could somehow optimize the amount of effort we're going to put relative to the food we would get in return. And from there, I worked with a bunch of people that use the meal plans and continued kind of trying to understand what I call sometimes the grammar of cooking. Because as I was doing the meal plan, I realized I was writing all these recipes. I wrote, I guess, 270 recipes that cover, 1 year's worth of dinners.
That's impressive.
Well, yeah, but I mean, that's what we eat, right? Over the course of a year, we eat about 270 different dinners, give or take. And then there's a few others that, maybe you do take out and maybe you eat out and you have repeats and this and that. But so that's what I created. And as I was writing the recipes, the systematic part of me was like, a soup is a soup is a soup. Every time you make soup, it's the same thing. And if you make a curry or a chili, it's more or less the same steps every time. And I started thinking more in terms of the logic or the grammar of cooking. And now I've transitioned to really wanting to further help people free themselves from recipes. understand the grammar of cooking, understand how the different combinations of food are. And of course, you can always hatch something, if you go to a restaurant that's got like a Michelin star, they come up with like fancy weirdo combinations that are actually delicious and amazing and stuff, right? But on the day-to-day basis, nobody has the time to cook like that. And also we enjoy comforting food that is recognizable, that feels traditional. And so that's what I now teach people, to empower them to not have to follow a recipe all the time, but to understand how the different dishes come to be and compose their own based on the ingredients that they have in the fridge, the ingredients that are seasonal, whatever looked good at the farmer's market, which allows to reduce waste, also to cost less and optimize nutrition all at the same time. So it's always my kind of Lego brain that likes to mix and match and build things and a bit of logic and project management together. That's been my driving force. So I really also care that the food is healthy. Something at the beginning I mentioned, I was working I cared about this primarily for environmental reasons. And then I became vegan more from a place of compassion and empathy for the animals. And in 2020, my dad died with Alzheimer's disease.
Oh, I'm
And
sorry.
in the process leading to that, I started seriously looking into the nutrition question because I knew previously I would be okay eating this way, but I didn't realize how good okay could be and
Hmm.
how much better it would be as long as it was a healthy vegan, whole foods, plant-based diet, not a, vegan nuggets every day kind of diet. So that became a really deep motivator for me because it's nuts when we think of the number of North Americans who live with 1, 2, 3, 4 different types of chronic disease, heart disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, and dementia, which is the worst of all. And most of those things are largely avoidable. Not fully avoidable, but we can sure do a lot. And it has to be accessible. So that's what gets me out of bed in the morning is helping people take charge of their health through really good food and home cooking.
Yeah, and also too, like it also impacts your energy, right? It's like when we eat well,
Yeah,
right? It helps us have more energy to just do the things that we need to do. It helps alleviate stress. I mean, the world is stressful. Things are stressful all the time, day to day, going to work, having families, and everything else. And by taking care of yourself with food, it's always a good place to start.
absolutely, for
That's
sure.
that's the one thing we have control over. Um, and yeah, sometimes there are health conditions that happen that aren't preventable, but when you still take care of your body and you nourish your body with good food, it increases those chances of getting well or, putting things
Yes,
in a better place. And so, yeah, that work on how we eat is really can make a big difference. It's not easy at times,
it is not. It is
but
not. It's a commitment.
but your system, I really think, is very unique and more approachable than a lot of the other ones that are out there that can just, again, feel very intimidating and overwhelming. And it sounds like you have fun too with it, which is important to have fun in the kitchen.
Yeah. Something I want to say that I love so much. One of the best, like on the short list of the best things I've done in the past 5 years, that one is up there. Something that is really hard is to be isolated as the only person who cares when you go vegan or when you do, even for people who choose to go plant-based for health. I hear a lot from clients like, I'm the only person in my family who cooks, or nobody else cares about this. I'm the only person who's trying to improve my health. Sometimes they've had a cancer scare or a cancer diagnosis and treatment, and they
Hmm.
want to bounce back, and they're all alone. And something I did because I needed it is that I started this thing called the Vegan Cooking Club. And because part of my meal plans is that building block approach, and on the weekend, there's a bit of a batch cooking prep session that is key to making the meal plans work. And I have to admit that often I would not do my batch cooking because life is busy. There's a birthday party, there's all these things, right? And so I was
Hmm.
like, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cook on Zoom at a given time every other week. And every week is too much, but every 2 weeks, I will commit to being at a time and a place. And lo and behold, there's now between 10 and 20 of us that show up on Zoom at that time. Currently, it's at 1 p.m. Pacific time every 2 weeks, and we cook together. And those are all people that didn't know each other before. And it's free, like people come and go, but it's so meaningful to be with others who care about the same things as you, who are also doing this for their health, for the other, for compassionate reasons, for the environment. But a lot of people that are there doing it primarily for their health. And there's that like gossip going on, and people are sharing information that they would not be able to talk about with anybody else in their normal environment
Hmm.
around them. And so it's super validating, and the cooking gets done. And I have to say, there's a little survey after the cooking club every week. And 100% of people that have come to cooking club over the past, I don't know, 2 years, 100% of them say, I'm really glad I came, right? Nobody has ever said, I'd rather have been doing something else. No, like once you've cooked, you're always glad you've cooked. It's like having exercise. Everybody's always happy to have exercise. Well, everybody's even happier to have cooked, and then to have the good food to eat, right? So it needs to be done, but doing it with others makes it more meaningful and much easier.
Yeah, I agree. It kind of makes it like a party, right? Like a social
Yeah,
gathering. It's a cooking party.
totally. Yeah,
Um, what are some tips that you can share that can help people create healthy meals with less stress?
yeah. So come to cooking club. I hadn't thought about that before now, but yeah, come to cooking club because it's so great. I'll give you the link you can share. Um, I think taking a step back and a deep breath and learning the basics, learning the grammar of cooking, of plant-based cooking, of healthy vegan cooking makes a huge difference. And I'll give you the spoilers right now. There's basically three main forms of dishes you want to know how to do. Soups and stews, so things that are simmered. And it can be as easy as dumping a bunch of things in a slow cooker. It won't be your tastiest dinner, but it will be dinner, okay? And there's ways to spruce it up from there. But so soups and stews, or also known as simmered dishes. And then learning how to stir fry is really key to being able to whip up dinners that feel fresh, crunchy, a bit more interesting. And learning how to compose bowls. I like to call them green bowls. I like to follow the Green Food Guide, which is a spin-off of the New Canadian Food Guide, which says you have to have half your plate with vegetables and some fruit. I like to say on a bed of dark leafy greens at the start. There's nothing that makes people healthier over the long run than having greens every day. So start half your plate with greens, top other vegetables on top. Add a quarter of your plate with whole grains and a quarter of your plate with a protein dense food like tofu or beans or whatever. And so I call that the green bowls. So once you know those three forms of cooking, you can improvise. You can pull together bits and bobs from your fridge and make healthy meals that will be tasty, and that will make such a difference as opposed to always scrambling to follow some kind of recipe. So that's my number one tip. So thinking in terms of building blocks, and that can be reused from one meal to the next. There's someone who talked at some point about continuous cooking, and I was like, that sounds really tedious. But it's this idea that what you cook at one meal, the leftovers can become the base of the next meal. And I like to talk about cascade cooking. That made me feel more satisfied than continuous cooking. And so
Yeah.
thinking about these building blocks that can be recombined and mixed and matched to form the base of new food. So you never start from scratch. You never start from zero. There's always something to eat. Because I know many people, they open the fridge and the fridge is full, but there's nothing to eat. They have all the vegetables and they have a pantry full of grains, but there's nothing like ready to go. And so having something that's at least partially done helps get the wheel turning. So that's a big way to reduce stress, and embracing simplicity. And I love the amazing work that all the vegan content creator, recipe developers are putting out there. It's beautiful. Aquafaba did not really exist as a thing until 10, 15 years ago. And now
Yeah.
we understand how it can make all these beautiful things and stuff. Yeah, okay. But we have to eat every day, 3 times a day. It's okay to be simple. And the funny thing is, when people eat out, if you order food from a restaurant, most people order always the exact same thing, right? They always order the number seven sub whatever from their favorite
So
deli, right?
true.
And is it pizza or curry, depending on when you live and stuff, where you live. So in the same way, but ironically, we kind of force ourselves to say, oh, we have to have like a different meal every day at home. And I don't think that's true. I have practically the same breakfast every day. I vary the nuts that I put in it. I vary the fruit that I put in it. But every day it's chia seeds and oats with a different combination of toppings and sometimes different spices. Every lunch, I have what I call a big nutritarian salad, like Joel Furman style, where there's like a mountain of greens and then some kind of protein and a bunch of tofu. Not a bunch, I love tofu, sorry. And a bunch of vegetables. Other than that, some nuts and seeds, make sure there's spices in there, a healthy dressing. And I have some version of that every single day. I don't ask myself, what am I going to eat for lunch? No, it's always the same shape, but I vary a little bit the kinds of ingredients that go in it. Having those rhythms, those routines makes it so much less stressful than starting from scratch all the time. And I think that's the key. It's embracing that simplicity, embracing that it's okay. And when I was cooking for my kids, when my kids were much littler, now they're 10 and 13, but when they were small, I realized that they actually preferred simple. And there I was, doing the meal planning puzzle and trying to do complicated things. And they were quite content with the most basic things most of the time. They didn't like the elaborate flavor. They liked things to be more pure, right? Um,
Yeah.
and I think in many ways, that's still a big part of us. We can build the diversity over the different meals by shifting the vegetables according to the season, using different nuts and seeds, using different spices, but we don't need to change everything at every single meal. It's a balance. And some people like diversity more than others, and that's okay. But pick your battles, don't make everything a mountain to climb, because otherwise it's like, oh, the heck with it, I'll just order. And guess what? They always order the same thing. So
Those are great tips. And I can attest to that. Me and my husband usually order the same things whenever we go out.
guilty as charged. There you
Yeah.
go.
And yeah, I think everything you shared makes sense. It's kind of similar to what I've started to doing because I would try to make something different every night and be exciting. I didn't have time for that. I always would then have things I was wasting. We would always like throw out so many veggies and things. So I've recently, in the past like few months, gotten more intentional with it. I make a salad. I make either a stew or a soup. And then I have like quinoa. I have frozen stir-fry vegetables. I'm a big fan of chickpea pasta, right? So I have all these little things that are component. And then I love bowls. And especially like if you have like little scraps of leftovers of things, just throw it in a
Yes.
bowl, right? Great way to like, eat up a bunch of things. And so implementing that way of doing it has cut down on waste, has things make been less stressful. And sometimes I do have the time or I'm in the mood to do something a little more fancy from a cookbook, then I will do it. Usually the weekend. Like sometimes on the weekend, it's nice to like then instead of going out to the restaurant, make something from one of your cookbooks,
Yeah.
and because I'm guilty of collecting cookbooks and not cooking with them.
You're the only person on earth who does that. Of
Sure. So
course.
yeah, I try to save that for like a weekend, where I'm gonna make this fun dish and make a big
Yeah.
mess in the kitchen but I'm gonna have fun with it. But it's the weekend. I have time for it versus the weekday. And I think when we give ourselves that flexibility, we don't feel trapped with something unpleasant, and it doesn't have to be a
Yeah.
whole daunting task. So, yeah, I think those are really great tips that you shared.
Thank you. Happy to help.
Yeah. And before we wrap up, um, what are some resources you would like to share or anything that you'd like to promote? You mentioned the cooking club. Is there anything else you'd like to share?
I love Cooking Club. But anybody can go on my website and download my 5-day planned and plant-based meal plan. It's a 5-day plan that brings in that like prep approach where there's some batch cooking on the weekend and then you use the building blocks on weekdays. And I have a templates section on my website that has a bazillion free templates and meal plan samples that people can download. The key is not to get overwhelmed, just choose one and go with that. I really encourage people to do that. And also, it's September now, and I'm just about to start running my course that's called Plan, Prep, and Relax. I run 3 or 4 cohorts a year, and this cohort is going to be really strongly health focused. And it's all about implementing what I call cascade cooking. So that approach to doing a bit of batch cooking and carry you through the week and mix and matching the building blocks and improvising based on the standard forms, but really with health in mind. So it's yes, it is important to have tasty food, but there's a number of my clients that have really big health challenges that they want to prevent. For example, their doctor has looked at them and says, "Yeah, next time you come, if your numbers keep going in that direction, you're gonna end up on pills, right, or insulin or whatnot." And they're giving it one solid good shot. And I think it's going to be a really interesting cohort to work together to really make sure that we optimize health. And it doesn't mean that, there's no room for drugs or medication whatsoever, but really having healthy cooking habits can make a huge difference in preventing chronic disease. And so that will be the focus of my cohort in the fall. So anybody who's interested, I'll give you the link and you can share with them.
Great. Yeah. Send me all the links you'd like me to share, and I will put everything in the video notes below. So anyone interested in checking out Brigitte's work or taking part in any of her programs and using her resources can do so with ease.
That'd be
Brigitte,
awesome.
it's been wonderful chatting with you. I feel like I could talk to you all night. Well, we're recording it at night right now. Before we wrap up, what's the best way for people to connect with you on all the socials, your website, and I'll also include the links as well, but
Right. Um, I'm not strong on Instagram, partly because I feel like a lot of Instagram is about showing really nice pictures of food, but it doesn't really necessarily mean that it's what you're going to do in real life. As we were talking about, I want to keep things simple. Best place to find me is on my website, veganfamilykitchen.com. There's a little chat box at the bottom, and it is not AI, it is me. And I actually answer messages at
nice.
various times. And I just love to hear from people and find out what they need to get healthy, to cook really good food at home. So I'm happy to help. And so veganfamilykitchen.com is the best place to start. I'm also quite active on YouTube. So youtube.com/, and it's under my name, Brigitte Gemme. So you'll have that in the notes, I'm sure.
Yeah, great. Awesome. Yeah.
Always happy to connect.
Yeah, great. Well, thanks again for connecting with me. It's been wonderful chatting with you and sharing all of your wisdom and resources with everyone. And everybody watching, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you real soon. Bye for now.
Thank you.